Welcome to part one of our video series on product design and development. I'm Brad Scheller, and over the next few videos, we're going to take a journey together. The journey every successful product takes from that first spark of an idea all the way through to sustained impact in the marketplace. This is not just academic theory. This is the roadmap that companies like Apple, Tesla, and Amazon use to consistently create products that change industries. And by the end of this series, you will understand not just what they do, but how they do it for yourself. So let's begin. This first section is about why. Why design and develop products, and why that may matter more than anything else in your career. Now, I know that's a bold claim, but I'm going to show you exactly why I believe it. And by the end of this section, I think you will agree. So here's the uncomfortable truth, and this is something nobody wants to talk about. AI is automating entry-level professional work faster than anyone predicted. First-year lawyers, AI can now draft contracts and conduct legal research. Junior accountants, AI handles reconciliations and basic audit work. Entry-level analysts, AI writes reports and builds financial records and models. Now, McKinsey estimates that 70% or more of entry-level tasks in knowledge work could be automated by 2030. That's not science fiction. That's 5 years from now. So what does this mean to your career? Well, it means the old playbook is broken. The promise that get good grades, get a good job, work hard, and you'll have job security. That promise is no longer valid. But here's what I want you to understand. This isn't a doom and gloom message. This is an opportunity message. Because while AI can automate tasks, it cannot create value from scratch. It cannot identify unmet customer needs. It cannot envision products that don't exist yet. It cannot navigate the messy human creative process of bringing something new into the world. That's what product design teaches you. And that's why these skills may matter more than anything else for your career. This course gives you three things. First, the fundamentals of product design, the timeless principles that have driven innovation for a century. Second, the emerging processes and technologies, including how to leverage AI as a tool, not compete against it. And third, a roadmap for staying ahead, not just for when you graduate, but for the decades ahead. But before we look at the framework that successful companies use, I want you to see the brutal math of innovation, because this is what you're up against without a systematic approach. Researchers Stevens and Burley studied what it actually takes to get an idea from an idea to commercial success. And here's what they found. You start with 3,000 raw ideas. Those are the sparks, the shower thoughts, the whiteboard sessions. And gee, what if we tried this moments? Of those 3,000, only about 300 ever get formally submitted for consideration. That's a 90% drop rate right there. Of the 300 submitted, only about 125 become small projects that actually get resources and attention. And of those 125 funded projects, one becomes a commercial success. 3,000 to 1. Those are worse than casino odds. Maybe they are casino odds. I don't play much. Actually, they're worse, I think. So here's the question. Why would any organization play this game? Well, the answer is they have to. Innovation is survival. But what separates the winners from the losers, the winners don't accept the 3,000 to 1 odds. They use systematic processes to dramatically improve them. And this is where your opportunity, where your value comes in. If you can help an organization move these odds from 3,000 to 1 to even 1,001, or better yet, 500 to 1, you become extraordinarily valuable. You're not just an employee, you're a force multiplier for innovation. Good product design doesn't guarantee success, but it dramatically improves the odds. And that's what makes these skills worth learning. And before we take a look at these modern frameworks I've talked about, let's understand where we're escaping from. Before the 1980s, perhaps ancient history to some of you, product development was the Wild West. The numbers tell the story. 80% or more of new products failed, 8 out of 10. And here's what made it even worse. Most of these new products weren't even truly new. They were derivatives. New models, new features, same old platforms. Companies were failing at innovation, and they weren't even really attempting it. Why? 4 systematic problems. First, ideas came from ivory towers. R&D engineers building what they thought was cool, disconnected from what customers actually needed. Second, there was no systematic customer validation. Companies would spend millions developing products, then discover nobody wants them. Third, projects only got killed after huge investments. By the time leadership realized the project was failing, they'd already spent so much that stopping felt like admitting defeat. So many were continued and failed. And that leads us to the 4th problem, escalation of commitment. Once resources and reputations were invested, bad ideas became impossible to scrape or stop. People would put so much into it, they couldn't face the sunk costs. Now, something had to change. And that change came from an unexpected place, not from business school or consultants, but from a fundamental shift in how the world worked. Now, this is a messy chart, but it shows a couple of things. First of all, my willingness to experiment with Notebook LM to create infographics. And second, my absolute dominance and power over the use of copy and paste as a core function capability of mine. Good skill set to have. But it actually shows something very, very interesting. And it's critical. Product development has never been static. Every generation faces disruptions that force the entire discipline to reinvent itself. Let's walk through this quickly, again, because the pattern matters more than the details. From the 1950s to 1965, this was the technocratic area. Innovation was technology pushed. R&D operated in ivory towers, handing breakthroughs to manufacturing with little market validation. This was the area of Sputnik and the space race, where military and government needs drove innovation, giving us civilian spin-offs like GPS and integrated circuits. 1965 to 1985, market pull and quality revolution. Crowded markets forced competition to actually listen to customers. The biggest disruption came from Japan, Kaizen, lean manufacturing. American companies suddenly faced competitors who could deliver high quality at lower costs. The rules changed overnight. 1985 to 2019, professionalization and digital transformation. This is when StageGate emerged. We'll hear about that shortly, bringing discipline to chaos. But the digital revolution kept accelerating. CAD tools, the internet boom, platforms, ecosystems. By 2007, we went from selling products to enabling platforms. The iPhone didn't just sell phones, it created an entire application economy. And now, 2020 to present, the generative AI era. The pandemic accelerated digital transformation by years, and AI has become what researchers call prediction technology, capable of predicting market needs, to take generating concept designs, automating what used to take teams weeks to produce, now can be done in days or hours. Now, here's the point I want you to take away. External forces reshaping product development is not an anomaly. It's the norm. Sputnik changed everything. Japan changed everything. The internet changed everything. And AI is changing everything now. The professionals who thrive aren't the ones who master one system and coast. They're the ones who understand that adaptation is constant, and they build that expectation into how they work. So we've seen the problem. Now let's see the solutions that emerged. It starts in 1986 with a researcher who decided to study what successful companies actually did differently. So in 1986, Robert Cooper asked a simple question. What do successful product development companies do differently? He didn't just theorize, he studied hundreds of product launches, successes and failures, and identified patterns. What emerged was StageGate, the first systematic project management framework specifically designed for product development. And here's how it works. A product moves through distinct stages: discovery, scoping, building the business case, development, testing, and launch. After each stage, there's a gate, a formal decision point where Senior management reviews progress and decides go, kill, hold, or recycle. Now, why does this matter? Before StageGate, companies had a massive problem called escalation of commitment. Once a project got started and people invested time, money, and careers into it, it was almost impossible to stop, even when evidence showed it was failing. The gates solve this, supposedly. They create explicit permission to kill projects that are bad early before they continue to consume resources that should go to better ideas. Now, at the time, StageGate was revolutionary. Over 70% of Fortune 500 companies adopted some version of it, and it brought discipline to what had been a chaotic, institution-driven process. And this is important, StageGate has its critics. I'm one of them. It can be too rigid, too sequential. One size doesn't fit all for all contexts. Additionally, it doesn't go into the details of how the individual tasks along each process should be handled and how you can utilize knowledge that's existing to improve the quality and efficiency of those particular tasks. So at a high level overview, it's great. That's where you need to start. But as we're going to see, the methodology has evolved, and we're going to take a look at some alternative approaches next. So, like I said earlier, external forces continue to drive change. Competition demanded that companies learn to execute faster and produce higher quality with appropriate pricing to meet consumer needs. This led to an ongoing series of enhancements built upon Cooper's work, and the advancements keep coming. 2 years after StageGate, Eric von Hippel at MIT introduced a radically different approach called lead user methodology. Van Hippel's insight was this: if you ask average customers what they want, you'll get average products. Why? Because average customers can only tell you what they know. They can only imagine incremental improvements to what already exists. But there's a special category of users, lead users, who experience needs months or years ahead of the general market. And here's the key. They often develop their own homegrown solutions because nothing on the market addresses their needs. Think about it. Whiteout was invented by a secretary who needed to correct typing errors. Now, I would argue that her greatest contribution was Mike Nesmith, her son, but that's just me being a Monkees fan. Gatorade was created by researchers who needed to keep athletes hydrated. They weren't designed by corporations. They were created by lead users solving their own problems. Now, let me show you how these two frameworks differ. First of all, StageGate is really about risk management. Its primary goal is to process discipline, stopping bad projects early. It relies on voice of the customer from broad markets, surveys, focus groups, the usual research methods. It's sequential with stages and gates, and it often produces incremental innovation. Lead user, that's about breakthrough discovery. Its primary goal is identifying emerging trends before competitors. It relies on finding lead users in analogous markets, people already living in the future. It's workshop-based and immersive, and it has high potential for breakthrough innovation. Now, here's the critical insight. They are not competing approaches. They're complementary. StageGate tells you how to execute. Lead users tell you where to look for ideas worth executing. Then, in 1981, a design firm called IDEO became famous through a simple challenge: redesign the shopping cart in 5 days. ABC's Nightline documented the entire process, and what viewers saw revolutionized how people thought about innovation. IDEO introduced what they call the creative funnel, a deliberately messy, human-centered approach that looks nothing like StageGate's orderly progression. And it has 3 phases. First, understand and observe. Immerse the team in the user's world to discover real needs and context. Not what people say they want, but what they actually do. Second, visualize and brainstorm. Generate a high volume of ideas, encouraging wild or absurd concepts initially. Quantity before quality. Third, prototype and refine. Use rough, rapid, and write prototypes to constantly test, learn, and evolve the design. Ideas philosophy can be summarized in one phrase, fail often to succeed sooner. They believe in enlightened trial and error, that you learn more from quick, cheap failures than from elaborate planning. Now, compare that to StageGate. StageGate, again, aims to prevent failure through discipline and gates. IDEA embraces failure as a learning tool. StageGate is structured and sequential. IDEA is creative and iterative. Both approaches work, but they work for different situations. StageGate excels when you need to manage risk and allocate resources across a portfolio. IDEA's approach excels when you need creative breakthroughs and user-centered solutions. So we've seen StageGate bring discipline to chaos. We've seen lead user methodology find breakthrough opportunities. And we've seen IDEA's creative process embrace failing often to succeed sooner. But in 2004, Amazon introduced something different, a framework that flips the entire product development process on its head. Now, Jeff Bezos' philosophy is simple. Start with the customer and work backwards from there. Now, this wasn't something uniquely brilliant, but something that his consulting background taught him. In fact, back in the 1980s, I was taught by my mentor to write client project reports before the project even started to help shape what the message had to deliver. Bezos just brought that idea with him to the new product development process. Now, here's how it works. Before writing a single line of code, before building a single prototype, before allocating any development resources, you write the press release and frequently ask questions that customers and internal stakeholders might ask. Think about how radical this is. Most companies start with technology or capabilities and ask, what can we build? Amazon starts with the customer outcome and asks, what should we build? The press release follows a specific 6-part structure. First, a headline, the product name plus the core customer benefit in one sentence. Second, a subheadline, who is the target customer and what value do they get? Third, a problem statement. What pain point or points are we solving? Fourth, the solution. How does this product actually solve them? Fifth, a customer quote. What would an ideal customer testimonial say? And sixth, a call to action. How does the customer get started? Very reasonable. Now, why does this work? 3 reasons. First, it forces clarity on the value proposition. If you can't write a compelling press release, you don't have a compelling product. Second, it exposes weak ideas early, before you've invested millions in development. And third, it aligns teams around customer outcomes, not features lists. So, this is the framework that launched Prime, AWS, Kindle, Alexa, products that have generated at least tens of thousands of dollars, no, billions of dollars in revenue. The product requirements, frequently asked questions, isn't just a document. It's a forcing function for customer-centered thinking. Then, by 2011, a new challenge emerged. Software was eating the world, and traditional StageGate, designed for physical products with long development cycles, again felt too slow for digital markets. Eric Ries, building on lean manufacturing principles, introduced the lean startup methodology, and it fundamentally changed how we think about speed and certainty in product development. Look at this comparison between traditional StageGate and the next generation Agile Spiral approach. Traditional StageGate, what I call the old standard, is a disciplined risk filter. It's systematic. It manages high commercial failure risk through sequential phasing with rigid gates. Discovery, then gate 1, gate 2, etc., where you can continue shelf concepts and projects. The gates serve as quality control mechanisms and checkpoints, go or no go. The focus is process discipline. Now, the analogy I use is airport security. Methodical, sequential, designed to catch problems before they become disasters. But here's the limitation. It assumes you can define requirements upfront and that they'll stay fixed and stable. Single launch at the end, sequential phases. The next-gen framework, Agile and Spiral development, takes a completely different approach. I call it the AAA system, adaptive, agile, and accelerated. Now, instead of sequential processes and phases, you have iterative sprints. Instead of a single launch at the end, you deliver incremental prototypes and improvements. Instead of fixed requirements, requirements are dynamic and evolving. The process is build, test, feedback, revise in rapid cycles. Get prototypes to customers early and often. Embrace early failures as learning opportunities that reduce long-term costs. The analogy here is GPS, assisted highway driving. You have a destination, you're constantly calculating the route based on real-time conditions. Now here's the critical insight. These aren't competing approaches. Modern best practices is also called, often called a hybrid, what Cooper himself now calls agile stage gate. You maintain stage gate governance for portfolio decisions while executing within stages using agile sprints. The question isn't what framework is right, it's which combination fits your context. And now we arrive at the present moment, 2025 and beyond, and it's changing rapidly. The AI augmented new product development revolution. This infographic again demonstrates my mastery of cut and paste, and it shows transformation from linear gates to what I call agentic speed. On the left, you see traditional new product development, the linear stage gate process, disciplined but slow. High failure rates despite the discipline. Development speed is baseline. Pace of innovation is linear and static. So look what's happening now. AI has become what researchers called prediction technology. It reduces the cost of predictions, turning design and market uncertainty into data-driven models. This is fundamentally changing the economics of product development. The fuzzy front end, that classic early stage where ideas are vague and direction is uncertain, is becoming transformed. AI concept engines can now scan social media and global data to turn points of pain into validated proposals. What used to take months of qualitative research can now be accelerated dramatically. Digital twins and rapid prototyping mean these companies like GE can evaluate millions of design variations in minutes, eliminating the need for expensive physical prototypes in early stages. Now look at the results on the right side. 60% faster pace of innovation at companies like Nestle. 50% reduction in development times for early adopters. And critically, significantly lower risk. The traditional approach had higher risk because you invested heavily before validation. AI augmented approaches flip this. You can validate faster and cheaper before major investment. The originator facilitator matrix shows two roles for AI. AI as originator, crafting and inventing new concepts, and AI as facilitator, optimizing existing processes. Now here's what this means for you. The professionals who thrive in this environment won't be the ones who resist. They will be the ones who adopt and adapt their processes. They'll be the ones who understand how to orchestrate AI tools within proven frameworks, using AI to accelerate discovery, prototyping, validation, while applying human judgment to strategy, customer insight, and organizational change. This is the competitive advantage that this course is designed to give to you. Now, before I conclude this introductory segment, I need to challenge something that many of you have been taught to believe is gospel truth in business decision making. Net present value, return on investment, payback period. Those are powerful tools, and they absolutely have some value some places. They've killed more breakthrough innovations than any competitor ever could have. Let me show you why. On the left side, you see that the dangers of NPV over reliance. First, the derivative project. Well, there's a bias there. NPV calculations favor safe incremental projects. Why? Because they're stable data yields higher, more predictable scores. When you're comparing a derivative product with known market size and predictable margins against a breakthrough innovation with uncertain everything, the spreadsheet will choose the derivative every single time. Second, the trap of false precision. Financial models for radical innovations rely on guesses that teams game to pass gates. Everyone knows the numbers are fiction, but we treat the spreadsheet output as if it were the truth. Third, strategic gridlock. If you only pursue high NPV projects, you end up starving your core technology platforms. You optimize for short-term returns while your foundation crumbles. So what's the alternative? Look at the right side. For stable markets, familiar existing markets where you have reliable data, net present value, return on investment, payback period, work fine. Use them. That's great. But for turbulent markets, or trying to establish a breakthrough idea, unfamiliar, nothing known about it, you need completely different criteria. Strategic fit, options thinking, technical feasibility, market attractiveness, core competencies. The strategic bucket method solves this. Pre-allocate resources to project types before comparing individual project financials. Decide up front that 70% goes to incremental, 20% to platform, 10% to breakthrough, or some such ratio. And then compare projects within those buckets, not across them. This comparison framework at the bottom makes this concrete. For incremental and derivative projects, use NPV, ROI, payback periods, low risk, financial metrics work. For platform and really new projects, use strategic fit, competitive advantage, moderate risk, strategic criteria matter more. For radical and breakthrough projects, use options, technical feasibility, high risk, and financial metrics will mislead you. Use weighted scorecards. I'm a big believer in rubric scorecards. Use them to evaluate radical ideas on technical feasibility, market attractiveness, leverage your core competencies, not just the financial projections nobody believes in anyway. So the spreadsheet is a tool, not a strategy. Know when to use it and when to put it away. Now let's talk about something that doesn't get enough attention outside of our courses like this, and that's implementation failure. You can have the perfect framework, you can have executive buy-in, you can have trained teams, and you can still fail completely. This is the story of Kirkham Instruments, a laboratory equipment manufacturer that did everything right and still failed. The diagnosis was clear. The system was beyond its capacity. The company was running over 150 concurrent projects with more engineers assigned to 3 to 6 projects at once. And here's the brutal math of multitasking. When engineers focus on one project, they're about 70% productive. When they juggle multiple projects, that drops to 40%. Context switching is devastatingly expensive. Over 40% of engineers' time was being consumed by non-value added activities, status meetings, reporting, switching between projects. The clear mandate seemed obvious. Cut projects by 50%. Management unanimously agreed that this was needed to restore productivity. They needed to cancel or postpone at least half their projects. They adopted a 3-part presentation for success. Cut the project list, use strategic planning tools, manage a disciplined project funnel. All sounds good. Harvard Business School professors were involved. The framework was sound. Everybody was aligned. 1 year later, complete failure. Look at the intended outcomes versus the actual results. Reduced project load. Everybody was overloaded, and that remained unchanged. Staff still worked on 3 to 6 projects at each. Strategic alignment. New planning tools were used for reporting, not for making the strategic decisions that needed to be made. Decisive gatekeeping. Only 1 project was canceled. New hurdles actually slowed down innovative ideas. Employee engagement, staff became skeptical and disengaged, viewing it as just another failed program. Now, this is what implementation failure looks like. The frameworks were right, the execution was wrong. So why did this happen? Let's take a look at it on the next slide. So this slide breaks down exactly where the implementation broke down. The problem was real. Extreme overload was killing productivity. Over 40% of engineers spent time on non-value added activities. Diagnosis was correct. The plan was sound. Cut projects by half. Adopt an aggregate project plan. Manage a disciplined development funnel. But look at where the implementation broke down. First, vague strategy prevented prioritization. Corporate strategy was just too general, making it impossible for the decisions on which projects to cut. And when everything is a priority, nothing's a priority. Without clear strategic criteria, every project had a defender and a reason to survive. Second, tools were used for reporting, not deciding. The new portfolio charts became a quarterly update for management, a communication tool, not a decision-making tool. Nobody used them to actively make hard choices. Third, a pre-funnel emerged that stifled innovation. And here's the irony. Gatekeepers began demanding excessive proof up front, screening out bold breakthrough ideas before they even entered the formal process. It was designed to improve innovation and actually blocked it. The result? Only one project was canceled. Engineers were still overloaded, and staff became cynical, viewing this as yet another failed management initiative. And here's the reason, or the lesson I want you to take away. Process implementation is change management. It is a challenge. It's not just a process design challenge. You can have the perfect framework, but if you don't address organizational culture, strategic clarity, leadership commitment to making hard decisions, the framework just becomes theater. When you enter an organization and try to implement these processes, you need to diagnose whether the preconditions for success exist. And that's exactly what the next slide gives you, a rubric for that diagnosis. This is one of the most practical tools I'll share with you in this entire course. And I use this approach on everything I do with projects and implementation stuff. Gloria Barczyk developed this 100-point performance rubric as a structured auditing tool. It evaluates an organization's new product development capabilities across several critical dimensions, allowing you to systematically identify gaps before they become failures. The rubric is divided into two major sections. On the left, strategic and process foundations, worth 55 points out of 100. These are the foundational pillars of new product development. On the right, cultural and analytical drivers, worth 45% or points. These are the human and measurement factors that sustain innovation. Now let me walk you through the several dimensions. First, strategy, maximum 20 points. This evaluates whether the organization has a clear new product development vision. Level 1 means no defined goals, just tactical focus. Level 4 means long-term commitment with goals visible to the entire company. 2, research. Maximum 16 points. Does the organization understand customer needs? Level 1 means no customer sensing, just internal focus. Level 4 means deep understanding of market and macro focus. Number 3, commercialization. Maximum 15 points. Is launch a formal, excellent process? Level 1 means ad hoc, informal launches. Level 4 means cross-functional launch excellence is standard. Next, new product development process, maximum 14 points. Does a formal stage gate process or equivalent exist? Level 1, no clear process, ad hoc steps. Level 4, flexible, disciplined process based on quality. Next, project climate, maximum 13 points. Do cross-functional teams have authority? Level 1 means no identifiable project development group. Level 4 means conducive climate with the right balance of control and support. Company culture, maximum 12 points. Does management support and reward NPD efforts? Level 1 means management discourages risk and creativity. Level 4 means a culture of collaboration with external partners. Next, metrics, maximum 10 points. Are results tracked and used for a decision? Level 1 means no performance measurement in place. Level 4, standard metrics drive all career decisions. Now, here's how to use this. Before implementing any NPD framework, audit the organization. Scoring above 0 indicates enabling effort, but top performers excel across all dimensions to achieve best in class. If you score low on strategy, don't bother implementing. They'll just fail, like the Kirkheim instruments. If you score low on culture, your gates will become bureaucratic obstacles rather than quality checkpoints. This rubric tells you where to focus your change management efforts before you try to change the process. It is a very, very valuable tool, and I hope you embrace it. And this brings us to the end of part 1 with the most important insight that I can give you. We've covered a lot of frameworks, stage gate from Cooper, lead user methodology from Von Hippel, IDEO's human-centered design, working backwards from Amazon, lean startup and agile from Reese, and now AI augmented new product development. That's a lot of frameworks, and you might be wondering, well, which one is right? And here's the answer. Context determines which framework to use. Your job is to understand the principles deeply enough to adapt them intelligently. These frameworks are a map, not a rule book. A rule book tells you exactly what to do in every situation. A map shows you the terrain and lets you choose your own path. Now, StageGate is excellent for managing portfolios and killing bad projects early, but it's too rigid for fast-moving digital markets. Lead User is excellent for basic breakthrough discovery, but it requires significant investment in finding and engaging with extreme users. IDEO's approach is excellent for human-centered innovation, but fail often doesn't work when failures are expensive. Working backwards is excellent for customer-centered clarity, but it requires a culture that takes writing documents seriously. Lean Startup is excellent for speed and learning, but it can lead to local optimization without strategic vision. AI augmented approaches are excellent for acceleration, but AI generates plausible ideas, not validated ones. Your judgment still matters. The Dalai Lama said it perfectly. Know the rules well so you can break them